Hey everyone, we're at West Coast Muscle Saws, Saturday, 9 o'clock. We're going to go over a few different topics here. Glad to see you guys there. Hope you are having a great holiday time, and Christmas is just around the corner. Just a few things I want to talk about today. I want to take care of some of my emails. A lot of times I like to just do it here online like this. It's more personal. I talk to the guys and stuff. And I had a couple questions. We'll answer those, and then we'll go on to other subjects. Excuse me. Calvin Young, he wants to know if I got any 125s for sale. You know, I don't. I do have that one you see on the open shot there. That's one I've had for years. I sold it new to a guy. I ended up with it again over the years, and it's a great saw. Runs beautiful. Hard to find, and we'll discuss that a little further in when we talk about barn finds, about your finding that vintage 090G or that 125, 101B, or any saw like that. And just a minute here, we got another one here. Tim Gordon, he's one of my guys I've dealt with for years. Anyway, I'd like to wish his daughters, Mackenzie and Marcy, a very Merry Christmas. I made him a nice little card here. It says it's the most wonderful time of the year for remembering wonderful people like you. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, you guys. Merry Christmas, Tim. And Merry Christmas, Mackenzie and Macy. You guys have a great holiday. And I just want to show you a picture here. Rafael, he picked this up in LA, of all places. It's a pristine McCulloch chainsaw. Isn't that beautiful? That's the 610 model. It's all original. Never had gas or oil in it. Just a beautiful. Now there's a classic barn find. I mean, when you can find one with the carry case, owner's manual, never had oil or gasoline, no fluids in it. Man, what a saw. Thanks for sending me that picture. Appreciate that. Jay's another friend of mine, and also Merry Christmas, Jay and Rafael. You guys have a great Christmas. This is Jay's 310. Look how clean that is. I mean, just pristine. And then again, it's got the carry case. You can see this little boot right here if you zoom in on your video there. A little rubber boot there. What that was, you could buy the saw with another feature, and it was an automatic chain sharpener. It mounted in there, and they've had these over the years. Poulan/Sears had that as one of their promos. And what it is a stone hooked up to a little cam, and the chain looks really different. If you've ever seen a chain that's you self-sharpen on the chainsaw, you sharpen it from the top of the tooth, not underneath like we normally file. And anyway, you'd run the saw, and you'd have adjustments, and you would dial that adjustment in there, and then you would push that as you revved it up, and you'd see the sparks just fly out there. It would sharpen it. Probably not the most best feature or the best way to go, but in cutting limbs and you need a quick touch up, that was their idea. We normally took them off out here on the West Coast and put a real chain on there and got the guys going. But anyway, isn't that beautiful? That is a beautiful saw. And there's his other saws. He got a really nice 194 there. Beautiful saw. He just purchased this, and we were discussing it, and that's one of the better saws. They're a top handle saw. You always got to be careful holding a top handle saw, and you guys realize that. You want to make sure you have a good grip with your thumb wrapped around that handlebar. You never want to hold a handlebar like, let me show you here. See my thumb there. Never have your thumb on top, wrap it around. And the reason you do that, and this is just some good information for anybody running saws, you've got some control over that. When you've got your, just a minute here. I think this is the old handlebar here, and you got your thumb underneath there, and that saw kicks back, which they do kick back. You got some control. If you have your thumb on top, you can have that slip right out. Just some information there for you. Isn't that beautiful? And there's his other saws there. He's got some nice saws. Thanks, Jay, for sending those in. And then we got some, I want to show you some other stuff here. Just bear with me. talk about a few other things. Let's go down here. How's your guys' weather? Weather pretty good where you're at? We just having rain here today in Oregon. Possibly in the mountains we'll have a little snow coming up. Never gets down in the valley here very much. Let's see. You had a 101B possibly? Good for you. We're going to talk a little bit about what we do with those saws, and when you find one here, just a little bit, guys. Just want to do some other things here. Talk about things that people have done over the years to improve upon their saws here on their own. They did this because they were cutting timber and they wanted to, you know, get out here on the West Coast back in the 60s, 70s, well even back in the 50s. You weren't paid by the hour, you were paid by how much wood you got on the ground, bucked, limbed. They actually limbed everything, we didn't have processors. You'd have on a landing, they called them landings, where they drug the logs up to it, and there would be sometimes 5, 6 guys. All they did all day long was called bumping knots, and what that is they would be cutting the limbs off before they bucked it up to load it up on the log trucks. There was no processors to speak of. They came later. Anyway, very miserable, very cold in the higher elevations here in Oregon, and one of the things the guys did, I don't know if you've seen this on one of the saws back east, you don't see it out here on the West Coast much, was the heated handlebars. And of course it was very popular up in Canada and on the eastern seaboard over there where you get really cold. In West Virginia it's raining. Well, here in Oregon we're fortunate, we only have winter 375 days out of the year. And if you think about it, that's kind of most all the time we get rain. Anyway, the handlebars, what this customer of mine did, he took a saw, not this one, but he took one like this. He drilled a hole on the side, got him some of that flex tubing, ran it up here, drilled a hole into the handlebar, and he piped heat into those handlebars, and he had a little adjustment, like you see on your control for your gasoline, where you could actually regulate how much air was going into those handlebars, because it would get very hot. He didn't have anything for the tail grip, he didn't come up with anything like that, but that would keep his hands warm and also help. These early models were solid mounted and they were very hard on your hands, and the guys would get the white finger syndrome where their hands would go numb. And so that's what he came up with, and I had the saw here for some time, still got it here somewhere, but it was just quite an idea way back in the 60s and 70s. And another thing that they did out here a lot, the guys are always trying to keep their feet dry, and they didn't have those fancy boots that you got now, the rubber uppers and leather bottoms and corked, different cork boots. You see those orange ones out there. You see the Hoffman's out there, very popular boot. I actually built a bunch of boots like that when I was starting my shop. I had a little boot, all the equipment to make boots, and believe it or not, I used to build boots for the guys, and we were some of the first ones that came up with the tennis shoes. We took cheap tennis shoes and we put the bottoms on with the corks, and they were lightweight, illegal as heck, but the guys loved them. And then also we did those, remember the old green boots, the old boots with the 3 laces on the top? We bought hundreds of those and put the spikes on the bottom, and anyway, that's just another thing I did. But anyway, boot oil. These guys there was an outfit that came up with a boot oil that was actually an automatic transmission fluid, and he had a concoction built. It was some of the best boot grease. It was horrible looking stuff, stunk like everything, but it would waterproof anything. And finally, after many years, never paid by the day, and I was paid by the timber that was bucked on. Oh yeah. Yep, they call it the slippery sliding scale there. You got to get into some good wood to make money getting the timber done. Anyway, the boot oil, horrible, stinking smelling stuff. Whatever concoction recipe he came up with, it was horrible, but it worked beautiful. And finally, EPA finally got wind of it many years after they made it, and we had to quit selling it because it was environmentally damaging, you can imagine. Anyway, a couple other things. This is something I learned from the guys long ago. Didn't really believe it at first, but you know how expensive those 3/4 chisel bit files. Round files are not that bad. They're up in price a little bit, but they're not that expensive anymore. But the 3/4 and the actual chisel bit files, the Obergs, and all the different files for filing the chisel chain were very expensive. And this guy, somehow he come up with this, and it worked beautiful. I didn't believe it at first, but I tried it, and man, it was unreal. You get your file, you know, after using it, you can try it on a round file too. After so long, it feels like you're filing glass. You know, the edges has gone off of the file, and it just doesn't cut good. What he would do is take a tall Coke bottle or something like that, anything that's tall that you can fit the file in, and he would put vinegar in there and let it set for 2 or 3 days. Yeah, sounds silly. It was like a brand new file. I mean, I don't know if it lasted as long as a brand new file, but it just actually ate away at that edge of those files and got down to the newer part. It worked beautiful. Man, oh man. It was great. Anyway, just a little, some information there. We're going to talk now. I want to talk about, like what you've seen on the introduction there. What do you do? What should you do? And I see this asked a lot. I get called a lot. You've just found a fabulous saw. And it's been sitting in a barn for years. What you want to do is not what I've seen this many saws ruined. You don't want to just squirt gas in it and jerk on the rope and fire it up. You might get lucky and you might not damage anything. More than likely you're not going to get lucky. That saw is set in one position for 10, 15, 20 years. All right, how you doing there, Jimmy? UK, all right. Oh, I know, you want a 125. There's still a few out there, but they're hard to find. We'll talk about how you might get your hands on one here in a minute. But you don't want to just automatically tickle it with some gas. I know you want to hear it run. Everybody wants to hear that vintage, smell that vintage saw fire up, smell that exhaust, and listen to it run. I've seen so many of them ruined, and they would not have been ruined if you just did a few steps. Of course, get that saw home. You don't know how it was stored. It might have been on its side for years. It might have been upright. You don't know. Some of the steels, if they're stored in a certain direction, all the oil goes into the crankcase. You can't pull them over. Feel like they're locked up. I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios. What you want to do first is get the muffler off. Some of them are a little difficult to get the muffler off. If you do want to get that muffler off, those particles, some of that heavy stuff over years will come off of the inside of that exhaust. You don't know if the baffles inside have failed and are in there and you're rotating it around. Get that exhaust off, clean that exhaust, look in the window of the exhaust, stick a magnet in there, try to find anything, and then gently roll the piston up to where it's closing the exhaust window, and then do some compressed air with goggles on. By the way, this video is strictly for entertainment only. You never try this stuff at home. You know the deal. You know the routine. Okay, and then after you've cleaned that exhaust good, then you should pull the carburetor, fuel lines, and you want to pull the carburetor. On some saws you can see inside, some you can't. Make sure a mud dauber hasn't built a nest. I've seen so many saws with mud, we call them mud daubers. They're the hornets or whatever that take the mud and they pack it in everywhere. Also, you'll see the big black bumblebees that'll just pack mud in every little hole they can. Very common out here on the West Coast, probably other places too. Anyway, you want to make sure there's no debris inside the intake. Clean all that out. Check the fuel lines, check the fuel tank. Normally they deteriorate. You can save fuel tanks by using what they use on the Harley shop. Hey, how's it going in Kentucky? It's called cream. And what it is a sealer. You want to, I have taken a steam cleaner, not on a high output, but take a steam cleaner and stick it inside the fuel tank and just kind of really clean it out good. If it is magnesium or aluminum tank, if it's plastic, newer version, then of course you can clean those too. The cream does not work good on plastic tanks, but normally they don't deteriorate where you need to plug holes. Magnesium, Super Pro 125s, all the McCullochs, Home Lights, all of them, they get little pinholes from where the moisture is ate through. It's called cream. You get it at a bike shop, online, Amazon. They sell the kit where you can clean and everything. You don't really need to buy the whole kit. You can probably come up with your own cleaning system to clean the fuel tank as best you can. Even if I've seen up to almost 1/4 inch holes in those tanks that are sealable. This is some really thick, creamy stuff that you pour in, and then you rotate the tank, get it all around in there, and it may take a couple applications, and it will seal it up perfectly. Oh, I know you do. Take care. The sealer has to set. How's it in Michigan there, Charles? Hopefully everything's going good for you there. Seal it and let it set for a couple days, vented, cap off. You've got the tank sealed now. Get your fuel lines hooked up. Take the starter cover off if it's got points, condensers underneath there, electronics, whatever's underneath there. I got a 125 in one time and I put it on my bench. It came from California. I was proceeding to do this, and be aware. Oh, you on the eastern side over there? Mike? Got it. 125, and everything was checking out good. I took the starter housing off. There must have been about 200 yellow jackets in there hibernating. And it didn't take me long to get it outside and blow those things away, so be aware. Depends on the condition in the barn, wherever these are found, the weather, these insects, whatever, like to build. Hey Dean, good to hear from you. Haven't talked to you in a while. Give me a call sometime, buddy. Like talking to you. The insects will build homes anywhere on these old saws. They seem to like that metal material. So check for all that and then clean all that. And then what I would do is on the intake and on the exhaust, and this I would use automatic transmission fluid, new, fresh. So the best lubricant you can ever get to put in there and rotate that engine to make sure it's free. Now we're doing this on an engine we think could be a good runner, was put away. Take care, Mike. Put away running, and we're wanting to bring it back without doing some major work to it. And lubricate it with some automatic transmission fluid, 2 or 3 tablespoons. Rotate that in just slow by hand. Don't go rip starting it. Go by hand. Once you do all that, then it's time to go through the carb, check it out. Make sure you got, if you can, get diaphragms for it, and get diaphragms for it. Most all the carburetors you can get. Now there's on a chainsaw collector's corner, there's a couple of guys, one I know of, that actually builds the diaphragms for these hard to get ones. And so if you don't luck out and find one, okay, we'll talk about the carbide chain. It's good stuff, but we'll talk about when we get a little later on. We'll talk about that too. The diaphragms can be made. There, like I said, go to Chainsaw Collector's Corner. Do a little research there. There's a guy that builds a hard to, if you can't find them. Most all the Tilson and Walboro, Zamas, and all those different ones, Bings and whatnot. You can still probably round up some parts on eBay or wherever. Just make sure they match your exact numbers on your carburetor. Most all the carburetors are marked. Okay, we've got the carburetor, we've got the tank fixed, we checked the exhaust, cleaned it, we bolted that all back on. We want to make sure we got fire. You get you a good test plug. I've showed you before my testers. See, we got one here. Hang on, guys, I'm looking. Yeah, I don't see it right here. We'll round it up. But anyway, it's spark plug out, and you can hook this little tester up. It's a high output plug tester or ignition tester. Spin it over. Blue fire, you're just about ready to fire that bad boy up. No fire, you better do some checking. You got to get that flywheel off. Some are difficult. You can email me on some of the ones, and we'll go over how to get hold of chainsaw guy here in a little bit on some of these vintage saws and whatnot. Anyway, you get your fire back on, and then fire that saw up, get it all put together, make sure no leaks and everything's working fine, vents and everything. There's a lot to it, but if you got a 125 or an 090G or a 101B, you're talking $3 to $5 grand value on that saw, and you don't want to mess it up. And if you can, by all means, get original parts, even used, stay away from the aftermarket. Drops the value. If you're looking for a valuable saw, it drops the value just tremendously. And you really should be honest when you talk to if you're going to sell one of these. You should tell the guy, I put an aftermarket piston cylinder on that 090. It's not original, because everybody wants original. You wouldn't go out and buy a 57 Corvette with a engine, not unmatching, serial numbers not matching and stuff like that, engine wise, and stay away from that if you can. I know some guys want to hear that saw around, they don't want to wait around to find their parts, but that's part of the excitement on getting these saws is locating your parts. They're out there, it just takes some work. Fire that saw up and run it a little bit and idle it up, and then get your, if you got a tachometer, tack it, make sure everything's running good. Don't over rev it. You know, you want to hear it run, you want to see the exhaust and hear it, and it's wonderful. But those are 2 cycles, and if you lean one out, then you've got a problem. You can really have a problem on that. So we don't want to do that, not at all. Anyway, you know, can't find the barn find. You're just out not having any luck. You're trying to find out a McCulloch 125. Oh, you'd love to get the 101B, 090G. A lot of times, and it happens out here on the West Coast, it happened a lot. Over the years, these guys would buy a saw and they would smash them we call it, when they were cutting the timber. Didn't intend to do it. And tree barber chair, which barber chair means that thing, instead of falling like it should, it just does one of these things and comes down and takes out the saw, and hopefully not the guy. Well, they usually, most all those guys hang on to their old saws, use them for parts. You might have to look around, look for used parts, tell them, you know, get on Craigslist, different formats. Hey, I'm looking for parts for my project 101B. I'm looking for parts for a Super Pro 125. And then you can start building it, and you're actually using OEM parts, even though it takes 3 or 4 saws. And I've done this myself. I've built some really beautiful saws from using 2 or 3 saws to make it. And it's, you know, once you get the parts and get them in there, get them cleaned up, and then again, that's part of the excitement and fun, is rounding up the parts, getting this thing together. You know, you're not going to do this all on a marathon a weekend. It's going to take you some time, and it's just fun to do. So anyway, you want to do that, and I just want to kind of wind down on that. But one more thing I want to do, I get requests all the time. You know, I've retired. I put in my time at the shop for years. I did the math one time. I'd worked on, I know a lot of guys go say, oh, you're full of BS. I worked on probably 400,000 saws for customers. I mean, I didn't, back in the 70s and 80s, there was not a processor. The guys ran these saws on the landing, plus the other guys, the professional guys, cut the timber. And they didn't have just one saw like we do today. I've got timber cutters today, they got one saw. Back in those times, they had 5, 6 saws. The timber cutters did not come home when the saw quit running. They didn't make any money driving back home. They go back to their truck, get another saw, hike down a mile down in the canyons, and keep going. If that one breaks down, go get another one. Every night they would bring these ones that didn't run in. They had like 5 saws. We might have a pile of saws, and we'd work 12 hours of the night getting those up and running so they could go work again. That was just the way it was done. So like I said, I did that. I worked on that. I bought, owned. You know, I'm powder coating. Thanks for that question there. Just a minute, we'll veer off of the how to get a hold of a saw guy for some work or whatever. But powder coating on the parts, you know. Yes and no. You want to get as original as you can. It depends on the collector. Some guys like a survival saw. You know, they like the dinged up and everything. They want to look at that. Other guys want it pristine to hang in their office. Personal choice. I've done both. There's nothing quite like a brand new looking McCulloch Super Pro 81 or a Homelight 750, something like that. And also you got to look at that banged up 750 and that banged up 125 and wonder about the guy that run that. All the stories behind that. Oh yeah, 166 Dolmar. I've worked on lots of those. There's a story behind all these high performance saws. Back then they were not muscle saws to go out on a weekend and you know, compete and everything. Yeah, I've showed you some pictures of my friend, the lady, competing in the 50s. That was promotion for McCulloch to show how easy and maneuverable and lightweight these saws were. It was not made for weekend stuff. So you can see there's stories behind those saws like that. But anyway, like I said, I've retired. I at one time owned thousands of saws. I bought just like Pinocchio, you know, that little cartoon. I'll never buy another chainsaw as my nose goes like this. I just loved them. But anyway, I've retired, thinned my herd down. I have a few saws that I want to keep. If I see something else out there, yeah, I'll buy it. But as far as wanting to have the chainsaw guy work on your saws, which I've worked on a lot of guys' saws, they're collector saws, and a lot of guys will tell you that. And then if you were fortunate enough to find one of my high performance saws that I built here in the last 5 years or so, they're just, if you get one, man, you've got a saw. What I'm doing is, and it'll be a limited bunch of, it'll be limited. You can get some quality one-on-one time with the chainsaw guy. We can Facebook for about a half hour, 25 minutes. I'm going to charge like $95, and it'll just be a limited bunch, maybe 7, 8, maybe 10 guys a month. But what you're going to get is some knowledge on how to work on your Super Pro 125, your 101B, your 750s, Dolmars, you know, on and on. I've worked on all of them. I mean, this was the proving ground for chainsaws, and it still is the #1 lumber producing state in the United States. And chainsaws, people said they were going away 20 years ago when the processors showed up. Well, guess what? There is as many or more chainsaws now than ever. A lot of areas are so steep you cannot get a processor. A lot of them, they winch the processor down a steep bank to get down there. And there's a lot of areas are just not accessible. There's all these farms, ranches that got the timber to cut. They're not going to get a processor in there and pay the big bucks to harvest their 10 acres of timber. So, like I said, saws are around to go be around. There's some good jobs out there. I mean, can't hard to find anybody that wants to work on saws anymore. I mean, the money's good. I made a good living at it. You could if you're interested. I mean, there's bar repair, there's chain grinding, there's TIG welding. I mean, and a professional guy that works on saws, you don't have to go looking for work. Work's going to find you. But anyway, if anybody's interested, you can let me write down my email address here. And if you get hold of me, and we can schedule you a time. But this is going to be where you need some really good information on repair work or how to do something, or if you want to learn some of the business, we can go over it and I can give you some pointers, and you can spend $95 or whatever for some information. It'll make you a lot of money. Okay, just a minute here. And how this will work. You'll contact me and verify that you're interested. And what I want is when we hook up and we were negotiating and wanting to do this, I'd want some information on what saw you got or what information you're wanting. As far as I say, hey, Rich, I need some information on that McCulloch Super Pro 80. How do you get the crankcase split, or how do you change the roller bearings, or home-like questions, you know, why can't I get the fuel tank off, you know, on certain ones. If you give me that information, I'll do my little notes and research and be ready and try to condense it down to where you get the biggest bang for your buck. You know, if you're going to spend $95 on some information, you want some good information. You just don't want a bunch of storytelling going on there. So, anyway, Saw King, SAWKING at hotmail.com. SawKing at hotmail.com, and we'll go over what you're doing, and if it sounds like something I can help you, I'll say, yeah, I can do that, and I'll send you an invoice, and you can pay it, and we'll schedule a time, have some quality one-on-one. If you're wanting to learn more about repairing chainsaws, if you're starting out in a shop and you're got some questions you can't get answered, we can do that. I did all kinds of warranty repair for the dealers, for the manufacturers, can help you with diagnosing. I've been diagnosing a lot of saws online, quality pictures you can take with your phone, and we can just see what we can do. Anyway, guys, that's going to wind it up. Everybody have a great Christmas. We're going to get out of here, and you guys have a wonderful time, a wonderful Christmas. Enjoy your family, and we'll talk later. We will